I'm going to use these two paragraphs from the short story After 20 Years to explain close reading. After 20 Years is a short story written by O. Henry, who also wrote The Retrieved Reformation that we just finished reading in class. Some things about O. Henry that would be good to remember is the fact that he did spend some time in jail and used those experiences to write short stories. Let's see, he also likes to use vocabulary in slightly different contexts. So it might be a word that we know, but he uses it sometimes in a different way. And another thing, O. Henry really likes that surprise ending, or that twist. So those are some things to think about as we're reading. Now the first thing I'm going to do is, as I read, I am just going to highlight words that either I am not familiar with or I know but might not understand in the context. And I'm going to highlight the ones that I feel that you as 8th graders might have trouble with as well. So bear with me. So I'm going to read, and as I read, I will highlight. After I finish reading the two paragraphs, I will explain why I highlighted them. The policeman on the beat moved on the avenue impressively. The impressiveness was habitual and not for show. For spectators were few. The time was barely 10 o'clock at night, but chilly gusts of wind with the taste of rain in them had well nigh depeopled the streets. Trying doors as he went, twirling the club with many intricate and artful movements, turning now and then to catch his watchful eye adown the Pacific thoroughfare, the officer, with his stalwart form and slight swagger, made a fine picture of a guardian of the peace. The vicinity was one that kept early hours. Now and then you might see the lights of a cigar store or of an all-night lunch counter. But the majority of the doors belonged to business places that had long since been closed. Okay, so I'm going to go back and talk. And as I talk, I might make a few comments off to the side. First of all, to be impressive means like somebody would be impressed by you. So if you're being impressive, that kind of lets, how do I put this? People think you're all that, I guess. But then it says the impressiveness was habitual. So the policeman walked with an air of confidence, and if somebody saw him, they might, look again. He exudes this confidence, perhaps. But it says it's habitual and not for show, which means that's just how he normally is. He's not trying to be, this show off. He just is naturally a confident person. And then it says for spectators were few. Well, a spectator, if you think about a sport, it's somebody who watches a sport. So if there were people that weren't out watching, then obviously the policeman was not doing anything, to be a show off about. And then it talks about it was barely 10 o'clock at night, but chilly gusts of wind with a taste of rain in them had well nigh depeopled the streets. Well, if you think about it, it says up here there weren't many spectators. Well, why weren't there many spectators? Because there were chilly gusts of wind, and that had a little bit of rain in it. So maybe it wasn't pouring down rain, but you could feel the rain and the wind. So it depeopled the streets, which means it made sure people did not want to be in the streets. Okay, so off to the side, I might type in something like impressively he walked with a confidence but wasn't being a show-off. Okay, next paragraph. Well, here, you might even put, if you like how he says it, I do. I'm going to write that. I like how he used depeopled. twirling his club with many intricate and artful movements. You can get the idea, at least in your head. You might not need to know what intricate means, but you can kind of get the idea if he's moving that club around a lot. Maybe he's like doing little tricks or flipping it and catching it or whatever. And that helps, the word artful kind of helped me with that. Turning now and then to cast his watchful eye adown. Just a different way, I think, to say, let's write it here. A different way to say, you know, looked down. And I'm going to put a question mark because I'm not 100% positive, but you can get the idea that he's looking at another direction. Now it says Pacific Thoroughfare. I know that thoroughfare is usually a street or a highway. Because Pacific isn't capitalized, I know that it's not the name of the street. So I'm not 100% sure why, but I also know that I don't really think it's going to be that important to the story. Now I get to stalwart, the officer with his stalwart form and slight swagger. Well, you know, I know that you guys all know swag. I know that maybe was last year's word, but, you know, it kind of means somebody who has like a coolness about them, I guess, or, if you walk with a slight swagger, it's like you're, you know, strutting your stuff a little bit. So it shows that he made a fine picture of a guardian of the peace. A guardian of the peace, I'm going to put here, guardian of the peace, policeman. Okay, and he is, maybe he looks like a policeman, you know, one who would be respected. Okay, whoops. Anyway, okay. I don't know if you can see all of that, but you get the idea. And then it says, the vicinity was one that kept early hours. Now and then you might see the lights of a cigar store or an all-night lunch counter, but the majority of the doors belonged to business places that had long since been closed. So it makes me think, well, let's think of a place in town that might close up shop early. So the vicinity was one that kept early hours, which means all of these businesses were probably like the 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 type businesses. And there might have been a few stores that were open, but not many. So it was pretty deserted, especially with the weather and especially because where he was, the setting. Now the next time you would read it, you would read it to make sure that you did not get confused, or you would find out when you got confused. So I'm going to, although I did kind of explain things, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, I'm going to just make a little hash mark anytime I think, maybe when I first read it, that I had to like reread it and really think about what it was that was going on. So the policeman on the beat moved up the avenue impressively. The impressiveness was habitual and not for show, for spectators were few. The time was barely 10 o'clock at night, but chilly gusts of wind, with a taste of rain in them, had well nigh depeopled the streets. And I already talked about that, but that was definitely a place that I would probably have to look at again. Trying doors as he went, twirling his club with many intricate and artful movements, turning now and then to cast his watchful eye adown the Pacific Thoroughfare, the officer, with his stalwart form and swagger, made a fine picture of a guardian of the peace. The vicinity was one that kept early hours. Now and then you might see the lights of a cigar store or of an all-night lunch counter, but the majority of the doors belonged to business places that had long since been closed. Okay, again, we talked about how depeopled might have been a little confusing, but if you just read it again and try to figure it out, you might be able to. Adown, we just had to realize it's not the way we talk, but we can figure out what he was saying. Stalwart might be a word we have to actually look up, but there's enough information here to know that this is a positive word, a word that maybe suggests confidence or strength. Guardian of the peace, we can get an idea that is a police officer. we had to maybe ask ourselves, what kind of businesses keep early hours, so we know what setting he is in. And then lunch counter. We don't always talk about, like, we don't call a restaurant a lunch counter. So I thought that was maybe an old-fashioned term that you might want to think about. Now, the last thing I would do would be making comments. So I've already made a few comments, but I also might make some more about just the general ideas that I got when I was reading. Okay, and a lot of it has to do with the character, the policeman right now, and what he has to do with the story and the setting. You know, so I might say this appears to be a story about a policeman. He is confident and is a good officer. He is patrolling. Oops. Yeah, okay. He is patrolling an area that is not very populated right now. Probably because of the weather, and also because most businesses are not open. Okay, all right. I might say, you know, this suggests that that something will happen. You got to wonder, if the setting is open, why, you know, if the setting is the way it is, you know, it's dark, it's a little cold, there's nobody around, there's just one police officer, and he's looking around, so you kind of have a feeling that maybe a crime is going to occur, possibly. You could make some predictions about that as well. So when you do your close reading, I need to see lots of highlights. You need to highlight for words that you don't know. You need to stop yourself when you're confused and figure out why you're confused and how to fix that. You need to make comments along the side. I mean, just in 2 paragraphs, I have quite a bit of stuff. And most importantly, when that all fails, you need to ask for help. But you have to do some of this on your own first. Close reading is to help you really understand what it is you're supposed to be doing and what it is you're supposed to be comprehending, and really paying attention to not just reading words on a page, but actually paying attention to those words and how they fit, and understanding in the process. Okay.